You're allowed to sit here. Please come join us. Please. Thank you. Please join us here. Will be the presentation by architect Festus Adibe Njoko, who's the president, Nigerian Institute of Architects. I'll be highlighting a few outstanding parts of his profile in a very short moment. And I'd like us to think critically about his presentation soon as it starts. Architect Festus Adibe Njoko, like I mentioned earlier, is the president Nigerian Society of Architects and was born on the 7th of May 1956. As a professional, architect Festus Adibe Njoko joined the Nigerian Institute of Architects as a member in 1983. He has worked on several outstanding projects, including but not limited to the Caritas C-ICADI JAP office complex in Enugu State, the liaison office of the Enugu State government in Abuja, the Enugu State Judiciary Headquarters, the Independence Layout also in Enugu, and the International Conference Center in Enugu, as well as the Loma Linda Housing Estate, Enugu, and other private residences. Architect Njoko has over 35 years of experience in the physical development subsector with outstanding projects. He's of course married to Mrs. Stella Adibe and they are blessed with 4 children. Please join me, put your hands together as we welcome Architect Festus Adibe for his presentation.
The Chancellor, Covenant University, the Vice Chancellor, and all the staff. I'm happy to be here today, to be part of this decisive conference on leadership. I'm speaking from industry perspective as a practicing architect, being the president of Nigerian Institute of Architects, and not a visitor to this Covenant family. All my children pass through here. They've all graduated. So I'm speaking on the challenge of leadership driving African future, the agenda of leadership, then revolutionizing human settlement and infrastructural sustainability in Africa. And I'll say that leadership, I don't want to go through the architect's point of view. Leadership, there have been many definitions since yesterday, I know. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. And this is what the architect does at all times. Please, I want if you look at that bell curve there, you see what we're trying to show is that the life pattern of any nation from age 1 to 18 is a formative age. The ones that take all the cover, 18 to 19 to 65 years, this is the most productive years of any society, and that's where the population is packed. And these are the ones that make impact on how the society moved. And then diminishing returns takes over, and you have the elders, 65 and above until death. And when you look at it, you see it's a continuous something, because whatever you are doing, from that 19 to 65, the elders actually think and program how society will go. The other two are watching and waiting for the day they will get there. And what they see you do is what transforms how they will behave in future. So we'll be very, very careful and we don't impart the wrong decisions to them. When we are talking of leadership transfer, I've tried to say from children, you get to the youth and the adults. So we ought to be following, they're following. I had a project I did for Ken in Namani Leadership Center. During the search for what can give us the definition or illustration of leadership, we got that the onion bulb is the best. Why is it the best? The onion bulb is such that when you peel off one layer of it, the next layer is as good as what the other layer did for you. So there's no gap. Each one, now they are telling us that our youths are lazy. No. The onion, as you remove one, the next one will still do the same thing that the one that is past has done. So we use it as our concept. And then, when we talk of vision, that's the architect's role. He visualizes what the end product will be and works towards that. So is our future. So Peter Drucker said the best way to predict the future is to create that future. So in your mind, this is what I'm going to be. This is what the future will be. I will be part of it. And you work yourself towards that. If you want to be a doctor, it means that you are going to take courses during the seconds that will lead you to becoming a doctor. So the best way is to predict it, is to create that future. Work that future into reality. And when we come to, next slide please. Now, we go to the topic itself, revolutionizing human settlements. Just like we have said, models, car models, vehicle models, anything you have, machinery, is being updated every day. What they had 5 years ago, they would have gotten where there were deficiencies, and so is human settlement. And what is human settlement? The coming together of people to provide shelter. And man is a social animal. He doesn't exist alone. You need people around you. So what we see there is an African hut, and beside it is a modern building housing the family. So it's changing with time. Next slide, please. And when we go to the villages, we can see that, and that is another house in the village. And it's a new world altogether, but it's the same soil. The same soil, but what you put on it, your input, is what changes the society to what they will see. So next slide is what happened in Malaysia. Malaysia had that as their village, and they went to relocate them. Those buildings, the people were relocated to a new village. In doing the village now, they took it to become 6-story high-rise buildings. When they took us, they said, I don't want my village to be like this. So that is the error Africans do. You take another thing that works for another people and you try to bring it to your, oh, we cannot live. I want to go to my village and relax. I don't want to live like a town again, vertically in my village. And in doing that, next slide, good. All they did is, in the road to the village, these are representing those high-rise buildings. They made it to wind so that you don't speed. But here we start putting bumps. So that we can copy. It's a good... And now, when we now talk about these settlements, we have a checklist of the parameters in infrastructural provision, which will make that those settlements to be modern, to be revolutionized. And we now said, first is just sighting. Sighting and orientation are very important, so that you make use of the natural wind that will give you comfort. Then the water supply, that has already been solved, because now we have boreholes, and we don't depend on, when we were small, somebody put a picture of his son, very, very tall now. See, is it that they are eating better than us, or the things we carried on our head? I knew when I was a kid, the river where we fetch water was about 10 kilometers away. I had to fetch that water, but now, technology made that the water is there with you. So it's energy. Energy is light. There are rural electrification, and there are generators now, and we're having solar energy now, which are all working and being perfected every year. And the next thing you need to do is the stormwater disposal and drainage. You don't need to go to the village and start putting gutter everywhere. You can just, within your compound, send the water underground through using soak-away pits, so it doesn't cause erosion. Waste disposal, road networks, telecommunication. In my village right now, I don't need to, I can go there. If you call me on phone, I'll receive it. That's the way my village is now. If industries are now put there, and we put parks, recreation, so that people can still interact, then you are having that place changed. Of course, now put schools there, put cottage industries, and people can live there and work there. They don't need to go to town again. So we say when leadership fails, one of the first signs is the collapse of infrastructures, as well as failure to keep pace with growth. If you don't predict that this village is, or this settlement is this population, and they continue depending on that source of water, at the time they will outgrow it. They continue depending on that transformer. At the time, more buildings will come, and that transformer will not serve them again. And the first cause of failure, we say causes of some of the cause of leadership failure. The first we say is corruption. I know you have already touched on that here, so I wouldn't go. But corruption is so endemic in that what we should achieve, we will never achieve, because somebody is interested in what will come into his pocket, not what will benefit the future. In this country, I was a student in 1979, and there was a MPN. When the army dislodged them, many went to jail because they cited boreholes meant for the community in their compound. It became their personal. I've come of age now. I can sing boreholes. I've sung for myself, and I've sung for my community. So what happened at that time? That people were taking the one meant for the community to themselves. They were in position to have given to the community. We see where corruption can lead us. Then pour research about the actual needs of the people. You come to a community, you are making proposal to give them mosquito-treated nets. The following day you come, most of them are using those nets as a fishing nets, which means they didn't need the nets, and the mosquito biting them is not their priority because they have got immune to that. So they need more fishing in order to put food in their mouth. So that is then the policies, retrogressive policies, which government is doing. Some of them are things that are happening now. Federal law revenue just jumped up. We are now going to assess tax through the corporate headquarters of a corporate organization. I am an architect. So if you do that, it is better for the corporate organization to decide to operate in a thatch house so that they don't pay much tax. And that is a retrogressive policy. Another one is poor understanding of government agency mandates. We see today JAMB has turned into a government generating, it's now a generating agency of government. Instead of making arrangement to have more student raiser, you pile up what they will pay to assess their result. At the end of the day, you carry 6 billion. This is what we have gotten for you, government. These are not why they were set up. Then policy somersaults. The other time we were putting toll gates in order to manage our roads. Somebody came, demolished the toll gates. Now coming, we build the toll gates again. So these are policy somersaults, not steady at all. So we say possible solutions to leadership failure. So well thought out policies driven by good research will help us to arrive at the, but one major one I say before you take your this thing. When I was a kid, I was taught a subject in school, which they have removed now. That subject was called civics. Civics, which taught us our relationship with the community, with the government. It was removed. And people are not, they don't have anything guiding them as they are growing up. If we do this and educate our children, bring them on the right line, we will do well to see that our community will change. And whatever human settlement we put up, having put all this, it will function and be very, very sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That was amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you. One question that you may please be seated. One question that I saw coming up on board whilst you were speaking is a question of how do we balance, development with, green settlements that are, that people still want to go to. I see that a lot of persons want to leave the city and go to the villages and just have this rest. But also you find those in the villages wanting to come to the city. And so where and how do we create that balance in terms of development? Before we harness reactions and questions to your presentation, it'll be my honor and privilege to invite Miss Adidiong Okon. As she comes forward, please, let's put our hands together for her. She's going to be making a presentation shortly. I'd like to just quickly highlight that Adidiong Okon is a graduate of economics here at Covenant University. Now she holds a master's degree in international development from the University of Birts. She's a proponent for child education in Nigeria and has shown her support in the past couple of years through the Ayehe Foundation and most recently the Home Education Fund. She's also the 2016 fellow from the Mandela Washington Fellowship program of the Young African Leaders Initiative. This is an initiative by the Obama administration. It's put your hands together for her. It's one very prestigious award that every young African looks forward to achieving. She has also worked for the Microsoft's public sector team and is currently the project manager for partnerships and communications at Code for Nigeria. Please join me, welcome Adidiong Okon. Thank you so much.
Okay, I've just been told that I have 5 minutes for my presentation, so if they can put it up right away, I'd appreciate that. And it's good to be back in my alma mater because I haven't been here in 11 years, meaning I haven't collected my certificate, but I'll probably sort that out now. So please, can I have my presentation up? Hi, technical team. Okay, while they try to put that up, I'll just talk through, because I have it here anyway. So I'm going to be talking about revolutionizing governance and democracy via modern electronic systems. So I think basically what I should do first is talk about what I do. I work for an organization called Code for Africa. And what we do is basically use technology to hold the government accountable towards transparency and open governance. And we do this by targeting intermediaries. The intermediaries are journalists, so we don't go into the field directly ourselves, but we have journalists pass this information across because we believe that journalists are the middlemen that get information across to citizens so that they are well informed to hold the government accountable. So can I have the slides up now? Thank you. So basically, I want to say that we know how technology and digital information have transformed the world. And we've seen countries continue to make stride in this area. And one of the biggest strides we've seen in this area is in open government. Open government is a partnership for governments across the world that come together to make their data open and accessible to the public so that way people can actually hold the government more accountable, and it creates an avenue for the government to provide their services online, for you to get access to your social services online. And over the past years, Africa has been undergoing a digital revolution, and we'll see in different parts of Africa that people have become creative about the way they deal with technology. People have created local solutions to local problems. For example, there's an app called Omomi, and that app, it was created by a Nigerian, and what that app basically does is provide medical services to pregnant women and women with children under 5 so that they can access immediately their primary health care centers and get access to treatment and the drugs that they require. Those are some of the simple innovations that people have made to make, using technology to make things more accessible through the government. And here, what I have here is a digital summary of what data and the digital hemisphere in Africa is like. So first off, we have a population of 1.2 billion people in Africa. And of the 1.2 billion people, we have 435 million that have access to the internet. And of those people, 191 million of them are active social media users, and 1.4 billion people actually hold mobile phones. And active mobile phone users on social media are 172 million. Why are we talking about these digits? It's because with data you can see what power can be harnessed, how people can hold the government active. For example, Twitter has become a large political tool for people to express their opinions and bring justice to governance. Can you move to the next slide, please? And there is the digital growth in Africa, just showing that on average it increases by 20%. Internet users increase by 20%. So more and more, if people are using the internet more, there's less of traditional media being used to access information. This is the reason why we try to get the government to come online as well. And one of our biggest recommendations for that is through partnerships. Through partnerships with organizations like ours that can promote data access and make it easier, because we recognize that there's a gap in governance and they don't necessarily have the skill sets to handle this technology. So we encourage collaboration and partnership with government and private organizations. So I'm talking of e-governance. That's basically what I've spoken on, that ICT can be used as a tool to provide citizen services. There's no reason you can't access your personal information online in relation to simple things like, even the government has made attempts in simple formats, say access to getting your driver's license online. You can't necessarily do that. You can apply and then you reach a hitch and then you have to go into the office to get that sorted. So we're trying to push that you don't actually have to leave your home to get certain services from the government. And also we enhance technology, we have seen enhances citizen participation in governance, and over time, thanks to different platforms and opinion polls on the internet, the youth have also been more engaged in government and democracy. So here I just mentioned some. These are just an overview of some of the challenges we face in relation to technology and governance in Africa. There's a lack of infrastructure in the sense that, for example, in Nigeria, we don't have access to power, and you can't successfully run the government without with technology without having access to power. Because by the time there are shutdowns and servers are not functional, there will be a data gap, there will be gaps in those sorts of moments. And then the citizens are already poorly informed, so sometimes we don't even know what laws exist to support us as citizens. There are a lot of laws that are in place in relation to your rights as citizens, but because the channel where most people are reading from or people are getting information from the internet has not been, the government has not put this information, all of this information on the internet. People are not actually empowered to know how they can hold their government accountable. And also, I want to speak on the gender and youth gap in leadership. In a big way, we've seen that the only way technology can move forward is if the users of technology are engaged. And even the creators of technology, which tend to be young people. And we also speak of gender in this aspect because studies have found that women are more willing to embrace certain aspects of change, but we do not have enough women in leadership that can effect this change. So we try to encourage that the gender and youth disparity is addressed in governance. And how we do that, for example, in our organization, is through a program we call the WANA Data Program. It cuts across Africa. It exists in Nigeria, exists in Kenya, South Africa, and Tanzania. And what it is that we empower female journalists, and we provide grants for them, and we provide technological support for them for their report writing and news analysis. So some of the solutions there in relation to technology, I would say, is that we should encourage, Africa should push towards having digital leaders. A digital leader is someone who is willing to embrace change, is willing to accept innovation, and has a certain tolerance of risk. Their risk tolerance level is high as well. And also, another solution is for the government to engage citizens more and to focus. One of the important things I think people need to speak more about is value-based leadership. A lot of people enter into roles in leadership and do not have anything that they stand for. Certain things like integrity, innovation, creativity are some of the aspects that you can embrace for you to have open governance and accountability. And there, I've spoken on structure and processes, redesigning that, and gender inclusivity. My time is almost up, so I'll just run through. If you can skip to the next slide. So this is just an example of how we've collaborated, how we've used technology. We've used technology to address gender gap across 4 African countries, and also we have also used it to address health issues that the government has not paid attention to. For example, female genital mutilation. Most people don't know that such issues, social issues, still exist. And in 4 countries, including Tanzania, we have been able, our journalists have written on this subject matter, and as a result, there have been policies re-evaluation, and in Tanzania, female genital mutilation has been completely abolished by their government. And here, these are just examples of how access to information, there's a lot of information that our citizens across Africa don't have access to. And also in paying attention to concerns, literary concerns, not everybody is as educated. So we try to find the simplistic forms in passing across information to citizens. And this is just another example. This is quick facts on Nigerian soldiers' allowance. These are the kind of information that we try to push out to the public so they're fully informed on how the government is taking care of them or serving and protecting them. So thank you very much. I tried to run through that very quickly, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy Okon. God bless you. For the sake of time, I'm just going to take one response each for each of the presenters, just one each. You have a question or reaction to the presentation that they just made. Okay, that's one. For who, sir? The architect. For Andy. Okay, thank you. I need one for the architect. For architect Njoko. Yes, sir. Yes, thank you. Please, the microphone. The microphone. In 30 seconds, please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, sir. I'm actually an architect in training, but I want to ask, because we're talking about sustainability and looking at our environment in Nigeria and also the body being NIA, I believe that if we have bodies like this, they could actually push the idea of sustainable development to the government and then stakeholders involved. I really want to know how the body can help, because we have ideas, we have a lot of design ideas. How could we push? How can the body be a means to aid such? Thank you.
Thank you so much. In other words, she's asking how can the Nigerian Institute of Architects harness the potentials of these young ones, you know, to drive sustainable development in Nigeria. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have a suggestion. You see, we've made this comment over and over relating to issues of what type of Africa do we want? Now, you talked about the youth not being well informed. I don't tend to agree with that. You see, we're in an IT era. What we should be thinking of, how do we reorientate the youth? Are the present youth ready for the future? The last presenter made some comments. I think what we should be thinking about is how to change the orientation concerning leadership, concerning the future that we intend that we propose for the youth. That is what we should be thinking about, rather than saying they're not well. The youth are well informed, but their value system is changing. It's changing towards the wrong direction. That I think we should look into. Thank you.
Okay, to address what you said, I didn't say that the youth are not well informed. The youth are well informed, but they're not engaged. They don't have a seat at the table. The government hasn't done enough to increase participation of youth in issues that actually relate to democracy and good governance. And that's why also when you spoke of reorientation, I believe I mentioned in my presentation that there has to be a focus on value-based leadership. So that's one of the ways that you can address, so that people even know why it is that they want to be leaders. So it's certainly from the foundation that the concerns that you have mentioned can be addressed.
Thank you very much. Your question is how you can be part of the development process. Okay. I think the Nation of Architects has a process. It's very simple. You graduate. You have to be underprivileged for 2 years. They will help you take the exam. The moment you pass the exam, you are registered and you can practice. Where we disagree with you is when you want to come, you go and set up immediately that you are practicing. If there's a building collapse, would tell us again one of your members. So we have that process. I don't know why you don't know about it up till now. You say? No, the ideas wouldn't come from me. There are how many Nigerians? They say 180 million, am I correct? 160. So, what I mean for the architect, each Nigerian, let's say again, take 60% of that. They are in that class who will need accommodation. Are you getting me? So, you have been trained. And once you qualify, you are there to pick from that market. All we do is to harness that everybody practices under a very conducive atmosphere, giving you the opportunity to climb. Unfortunately, our government is not doing that. I won't lie to you. Something happened recently. We are talking of Africa. The ECOWAS building in Abuja is to be renovated. Architects are taken from here because Chinese want to do it and they want to give it to Africans free. It's not free, it's a loan. So they didn't tell us and we were quarreling about it. So there is a law that says I cannot go to another country and practice. I must practice under somebody. It's a universal law for all architects. But here, our political class will not even consult us. So this is what we are facing, because the moment one of us gets that commission, he will employ more people. And it's pressed right down. So that is one of the things we are saying, that we have got it wrong. And the moment we get it right, it will spread around. Everybody will be cheerful again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You want to put your hands together for them as they take their seats. Thank you so much, Andy Okon, and thank you so much, Architect Njoko. Thank you very much. Moving on pretty quickly, next 15 to 17 minutes, we're going to be listening to a presentation tagged "The Africa We Want, Leadership Agenda for Civil Societies and Peaceful Coexistence." And this will be presented by Dr. Kainsile Litchfield. Please put your hands together for her as she comes forward. I'll quickly like to highlight that she was a former freedom fighter in the bush during the apartheid in South Africa. Please put your hands together for her. Also, she was a former MP and also a retired admiral and the first woman admiral in South Africa. Please join me as we welcome Dr. Kainsile Litchfield. Thank you, ma'am.
Where's the Shabalala? It's not just Litchfield, the Shabalala is missing. Thank you so much. You will operate, ne? Thank you very much. I have a very difficult task of reducing what I was supposed to do in 30 minutes to 17 minutes. I think speakers like accountants or lawyers, we must start having an association of hours so that we are protected, so that we are not asked to prepare for 30 minutes and then when we are about to present, you are told you've got 17 minutes. It throws you off guard, isn't it? Yes, it's not fair. So I just thought that should come out. Whenever I'm called to speak, I always ask myself, what is it that people will not hear from the other speakers? And I always say, just divine intervention, just lead me to those areas where people shall not touch. So I decided to do this another way. I said, before we can say what Africa we want, we need to know what Africa was made into, and what Africa then can be. So very quickly, I shall go to just first something that must go out of the way. As I speak, please be cognizant of something psychologists have studied called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is real. It's a chemical reaction that happens in your brain when you've been lied to so much that even when the truth appears, the truth itself becomes another lie. You know, the truth just becomes, you never know. The lie is stuck so much, the truth cannot dislodge it. And then in my PhD thesis, I came up with something called post-traumatic slavery and colonial disorder. And mainly it manifests in self-hate. Doesn't make sense for me that as a continent, the rate of skin bleaching has tripled in the last 20 years. It says something about where we are as a people in terms of our identity. But also for me, self-hate manifests in many things. You know, somebody made a comment yesterday, whenever the issue of gender come up, African men are quick to say, but African women don't support African women. Well, that's self-hate, because who told you African men support African men? If African men supported African men, the AU would not be in the shambles that it is in. The AU doesn't, it sits predominantly with men that sit as Francophone, as Anglophone, and as Lusophone, the former Portuguese. And each of them listen to the former master. And there's even competition of personalities amongst themselves. So as much as we talk about the pull head down syndrome, let's please remember there is a big pull him down syndrome in this continent that has led to over 20 civil wars where rape was the #1 weapon. Now, let's quickly look at what were we before we were made what we are. Just go to the 3 maps. You are way ahead. Just go to the... Yes. Yes. Now, this concerns me, because when you look at these 2 maps, it's what we have been made to be. These are military bases throughout the African continent. Now I have a fundamental question to all of us. How do we call a conference and sit here for 3 days articulating the Africa that we want when this is happening right under our noses? Every day foreign military bases are mushrooming in this continent. What you see on the screen does not even count Britain and France. This is mainly American. We have not touched Britain and France. Now I am saying, because we all know we live under what is called neocolonialism, which is economic and cultural slavery, we are not going to be let to develop without interruption. Now, if they are already in our midst, it means they don't even need to attack us. They can just rise amongst our midst and just make sure that we do the right thing. So as we speak about the Africa we want and political will and what our governments are doing and are not doing, please let us remember that the military bases are not around the corner. They are in our midst. And I am sad to say Nigeria is one of the countries that is given foreign military bases. I told a Nigerian sitting on the plane coming here this, and he almost jumped out of the plane. He said, with whose permission? I didn't even know, government didn't consult us. I said, well, those are the things as citizens by right we should be fighting and looking at. Okay. And what we are, look at this slide. I like this slide because I'm amongst the first people when I was an EFF MP to shout to Zuma and say, pay back the money. And then I attended a conference as an MP, CSO conference that talked of a sketch called illicit financial flows. Illicit financial flows is lack of corporate tax payment in Africa. The Mbeki report studied close to 30 years of Africa, right up to 2010. And this is what they found. It's worrying. 5% of the money that leaves this continent illegally, it's called base erosion, is African government corruption, direct corruption. 31% is criminal. 64% is what in South Africa we call white monopoly capital. Some people call them transnational companies. Some people call them multinational companies. Your Shell, your BP, we know them. Your Anglo-American, your Anglo-Gold, your Lonmin, we know them. They don't pay tax in this continent. But you know, I don't regard myself ignorant. I actually thought that I'm very woke, to borrow a term from African Americans. But I only came to know about this in 2014. And I said to myself, the power of a single narrative is very real. The fact that 86% of world media is owned between 6 companies, they determine what you hear, when you hear it, how long it lasts as an item, is very worrying. Because the same media owners are the ones that own and are doing business in Africa. So they shall never put themselves on the spotlight. So from Ghana 1957 to South Africa 1994, all we were told is that we are not developing because our governments are corrupt, they steal too much. But who steals too much? Because this 64% is tax avoidance, tax erosion, profit shifting, price collusion, and all sorts of other things that they do. With, by the way, the aiding and abetting of what we call the enablers in tax justice. Your KPMG, Ernst & Young, we call them the big 5. Law firms and commercial firms, who the law right now says cannot be touched, they can't be prosecuted. If you find the company has committed these three things actually, because even tax avoidance is not a crime at the moment, only evasion. So if you find they've committed these things, you can only prosecute the company, but not the enabler. But if you watch somebody rape somebody, they are going to tell you, you are also guilty by what? Association. But we haven't come thus far with these companies. Okay? Now, I like this slide also, because it is said that the infrastructure needs of Africa currently sit at about 90 billion. And we are told about 45 of it is mobilized or 50 is mobilized. But do you know Africa loses every year collectively, and it's an estimation, 50 billion US dollars through lack of corporate tax payment. Now imagine, it would mean if that money stayed in Africa and was used properly, by the way, in terms of development, Africa would be far. Okay, gives me now. Here are the slides of the media. I'm sorry this presentation is going this way because I'm trying to rush time. Here are the slides of the, no, go back to the other one. Now, this is the 6 companies I told you about. The next one shows you the television companies. Okay, go to the next one. These are the television companies. You know, most African news, after they report, please watch out for a line underneath. They will tell you Reuters says so, or they acknowledge Reuters. Well, Reuters is very wealthy. They have over 2,500 journalists all over the continents, people who are on the dot there to take the story. So if you're a struggling media house of Africa, who do you get your news from? From Reuters. Same 6 companies that determine what you hear and how you hear it. Okay? Now, I like this one also. People always talk to us these big terms, foreign direct investment, the rand is falling and whatever and whatever. And I always say the funny thing is when the rand is high or low, I never see the difference on the food of my table. But besides that, here's the issue for me. This is a game. I hope you know this is a game. The Naira cannot be weaker than the dollar. How come? With all the oil. It can't. Now, here is where the cookie crumbles. There are 3 rating agencies in this world. S&P, Fitch, and Moody. Between the 2, Moody and S&P, they actually control 80%. And then you have this other one, controlling what? 10%, 15%. They determine which currency is weaker than the other. Please don't be fooled. Those things are never based on whether there's transparent government or there's no transparent government. They are based on whether your foreign interest is in line with Western interest, primarily America, which then bulldozes England and the others to cooperate with it. It doesn't make sense. DRC has got, in every Congolese is supposed to be a billionaire if you look at what DRC has. But their currency is one of the weakest. Okay? Now, I like this slide after we talked about the media. All you ever had, and by the way, I'm not in the ANC. I was a guerrilla in the bush when Mandela sold out, and I'll talk about him right now, quickly before I sit down. I decided I am not in this zoo. So, I'm not in the ANC. So don't think I speak for him because I'm in the ANC. But all you ever heard about Zuma was negative, stopping short of calling the man a rat. Zuma's reputation, some rats have got better reputation than the reputation of Zuma. But no media told you Zuma did this, eh? No media told you in terms of illicit financial flows and tax, Zuma recovered all this money from white monopoly capital. Because there's something called African Tax Administration Forum, which is helping African governments sign laws that force these people to pay tax. Nobody told you this. But also, if you're South African like me, you will know that Zuma's first term didn't have such backlash until Zuma started doing this. So I'm saying to you, as we want to develop as Africans, please can we inform ourselves and not be informed by CNN and BBC aligned. See, I arrived here and I realized that the only TV station here is CNN. I don't watch it, unfortunately. I won't even allow my dog to watch CNN, let alone human beings. So it means I'm useless sitting here. Because CNN is the one that told us that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when it knew very well that there were none. So I shall not be lied again by CNN. Okay? Now, this is the picture. I'm sorry for the graphicness, but this is how the world is run, unfortunately. As you watch this picture, I want to talk to you quickly about 2 things. The world is sold to us as a world of idealism, where states have a right to territorial integrity, right to self-determination, right to national sovereignty, free and fair elections. That's the world sold to us through the United Nations. But how is the world really run? Because for us to develop, we need to know who the enemy is. How is the world really run? This is the true picture of the world. It's called realism. There's no idealism in the world. Realism is what made Gaddafi die in broad daylight. Why did Gaddafi die? Do yourselves a favor. You are university students. Go and watch the last speech of the United Nations General Assembly, where Gaddafi tells all African leaders sitting there, they became like wet chickens when he started addressing them. They couldn't even lift their heads. Where he told them, I'm going to be killed. This is my last United Nations General Assembly, and it's going to be with the cooperation of most of you. And he said to them, you think it's a Gaddafi thing? Today is me, tomorrow it will be you. The day you start getting woke and getting your Africanness, they will do to you like they're going to do to me. And for sure he was killed. The first people who cooperated was South Africa, unfortunately, for the no-fly zone. Now, having said that, I just want, before we come here, leave it on, because it's the last slide. I just want to quickly say, what were we, because those are the slides I skipped. What were we before we were made into what we are? And I had 3 slides, I don't have the time to show them now. But quickly can I say to most of you, and I want an answer, just shout it out. When I say pyramids, what comes to mind? Egypt. Do you know sitting here that there are more pyramids in Sudan than there are in Egypt? But there are more pyramids in South Sudan, and they are not profiled because there is direct evidence that they had not extinguished. That proves that all the pyramids in South Sudan were built by a line of queens called the Kendake queens. So Kendake was the title. So you got Kendake, Kanyisile, Kendake, Oluwade, Kondake, this one, Kondake, this one. And one of those Kendakes, Amanirenas, the one-eyed queen, fought and defeated the Roman Empire. Isn't it they tell you about the mighty Roman Empire? Next time they tell you, ask them what's so mighty about it, because an African queen defeated Augustus. They signed the 3-year treaty. And after they signed the 3-year treaty, the child of Amanirenas, Amanishaketo, whose child was then Amanirena, built those pyramids, because they said when they signed the treaty, you shall keep your troops Roman Empire up to Kemet. I refuse to call it Egypt. The proper African name is Kemet. You will keep your troops in Kemet and you shall not come into Nubia. And because the Roman Empire could not come into Nubia, they prospered far above Kemet, which is why they then had more pyramids than anybody else. Now, let's come to this slide. What's the way forward? The last one. Oh no, you can't do that to me. Yes. Now, what am I proposing? What's the way forward in terms of this thing called African development? Look, Thomas Sankara says we must learn to live the African way. It is the only way to live in dignity. Can I unpack that quickly? Comrades, fellow brothers and sisters, fellow believers, there are only 3 races in the world. Don't fool yourself. Anthropology agrees, the Bible agrees too, by the way. You have the Caucasian race, that's white people. You have the Mongoloid race, that's yellow people. You have the Negroid race, that's black people. Now, the realist game of the world currently, even what we call democracy, it's a pity most of you were not here when Mama Celia unpacked it in her closing remarks yesterday. Even this game called democracy, we are playing it according to the rules of who? The Caucasian race, the West, followed by the Mongoloid race, not our game. Now, if you play any game according to the owner of the game, he designed the rules, who's gonna win? The person's gonna win. That's why Sankara says it is the only way to live in dignity. He then says you cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. I don't think Africans were mad enough. See, the self-hate does not allow us to be mad enough. I mean, our self-hate, I must say this because I'm addressing a Christian congregation. Our self-hate is so much that some African people's God does not even speak their language. If they have not said Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nissi, they have not prayed. So they have made God in their own image. It's the other way around, because their God is not African and can't even speak Yoruba, but God made them Yoruba. Now, so we need to re-embrace our Africanness for us to leap out of the quagmire we have locked ourselves in. Secondly, I like Marimba Ani. She combines anthropology, psychology, and archaeology. African-American professor. Marimba Ani says, culture is to a nation what immunity is to the body. Now we know that if your immune system is infected by a virus or by any other foreign body, it doesn't matter how much you are going to run and try and keep fit. You have to solve the problem in the immune system. Africans, our culture is infected by what is called Eurocentrism and Arab-centrism, by the way. Because, and please understand me, I am not saying that's what Christianity is. I'm saying the way it was presented to us. Christianity was presented to us in a tablet raped in Europeanism. That's why you even had to change your name. You had a heathen name and a Christian name. And they taught us that God speaks their language. Arabs the same way. That's why the first thing they learn is the Arabic language. Their God doesn't speak their languages too, by the way. He speaks only Arabic. And they also have to change the name. Now, we have to go back and cure the immunity of our race and our continent, which is in our culture. Guys, God being God, if he wanted you to be Mongoloid or Caucasian, he would have made you that now. You are African for a purpose. We are the only people whose agenda is not at the table because we are languishing in cultural and economic slavery called neocolonialism, and we stand in these platforms and speak as if everything is on par. Africa is free. Africa is not free. And maybe, just maybe, Jesus is not coming back until we do the right thing on earth, because we are so ready wanting to go to heaven, but we are not fixed what we need to fix on earth, what we were put here for. So we make many Africans to be unchristian because we are refusing to make our Christianity relevant to Africanness. So, in sitting down, I promise them Mandela quickly, and I have to. You see, the power of a single narrative is powerful. That's why I said 86%, and they are Jewish companies, all of them, by the way. And Christians, can we learn to separate Israel and Zionism? The two things are not the same. You cannot sit here for the life of me supporting what Israel is doing to Palestine. Because you need to separate. That's not Israel, that's Zionism. Anyway, let's talk about Mandela quickly. Which part of the Mandela legacy, you that have made him your hero, do you actually subscribe to? The legacy where he moved from a rural area, came to an urban area, left a wife that he married, loved, had children, but was his age, came to Johannesburg, saw a younger Winnie and dumped that one so quickly like a hot potato. Which legacy of him do you want us to hold on to? The one where he came out of prison, looked at Winnie and said she's old from visiting him at Robben Island, being licked by dogs, beaten. And then he said, I will dump this hot potato and I will get a younger crusher. Which legacy of him do you want us to hold on to? The legacy where the man, excuse my judgment, is so wicked. He forgave Afrikaners for all they did to us but couldn't forgive his own wife. Which legacy, and forgive what? Because Mandela has got children out of wedlock. So what did we need to that Mandela did not do? Because this is a patriarchy thing. The last thing, what legacy of him do you want us to hold on to? Where he championed the selling of 26. You know you can't deliver to African people unless you run a semi-socialist system, the way Scandinavia does. Where he oversaw the auction of 26 state-owned companies, and that money was not invested in our economy. It was used to pay off an apartheid debt that was borrowed to torture us and kill us at the IMF and World Bank. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. You may please sit here. Thank you very much, ma'am. I bet you'll agree that she is an Afrocentric public speaker committed to the decolonization of Africa. Thank you so much. But before we take questions from her, I'd like to invite the next speaker, questions for her. I'd like to invite the next speaker, Mr. Abiodun Fijabi, who's going to be speaking to us briefly on blueprinting Africa's leadership future, generic templates. And as she mentioned, indeed, we need advocacy for, public speakers. However, also, if public speakers will abide and keep to the time allotted, we won't need any advocacy. Think about it. Thank you very much. Before I invite him, let me quickly highlight that Mr. Fijabi has worked at the top management levels of two multinational corporations in Nigeria, the SCOA Nigeria and Tower Aluminium Group. His experience spans the managerial, marketing, service, and engineering fields. He's now an entrepreneur, public affairs analyst, writer, public speaker, and trainer. Since 2002, he has been on the international faculty of Haggai International, an Atlanta-based institute that advances the skills of strategic leaders from the developing nations. He is currently a senior faculty of the institute, and his commitment to leadership has led him to establish a Lyon College and Leadership Academy. Please join me in welcome Mr. Abiodun Fijabi.
Thank you so very much. Such a wonderful conference this has been. To me as an individual, listening to these wonderful speakers out of this great continent, and then a lover of the continent, gave me goosebumps. I sat down there listening to all of those things that are sufficient to brighten the dark face of our continent. And I say to myself, in God and in these men and women, I have hope of a better African continent. Blueprinting Africans' leadership future. Are there generic templates? We've already spoken about Africa with its contrasting fortunes. We have a bright economy, but that is blighted by population explosion, corruption in high and low places, poverty that has become endemic, and of course wars and all sorts of anger that is splitting out in different forms of violence across our nations. We can no longer say that the colonial rule was responsible for this. It would be like the story of a woman who lost her husband 3 years ago, and she said, do you know, because somebody asked her, how come you are dirty? How come you look haggard? And she said, for the past 3 years that my husband had died, I have not had a bath. Our nations can no longer lay claim to our misfortunes because of what other people did to us. 10 years to me after our independence, whatever it is that we have complaints about should fall squarely on our laps. So what we see across Africa is the failure of leadership. Of course, Africa has a past, and a very checkered past. Our pre-colonial era was made up of systems that worked, social, economic, political systems that worked. We also had values that will stand the test of time in the international community, like that of honesty, like that of playing by the rule. It was difficult for a king, of course, there were monarchies in those days, to just ride roughshod on the people. Among the Oyomeses, for example, in southwest Nigeria, when they found out that a king had become recalcitrant and he was not listening to the people, the elders would gather together, led by the people, and they would give him a calabash which he had to open. And the only way for him to be able to maintain his dignity is to go somewhere and kill himself, so that somebody can come and replace him. All right, the equivalent of that would be that every 4 years you choose another president. So the values were there. If you were dishonest and you do not hone up to your dishonesty, they would take you to a god, and you have to swear before the god and make a decision whether you want to live or you want to die. Live as a honest person, or die, as a dishonest person. I do not know whether you've studied Karl Marx. Karl Marx had this theory about a people without a heritage can easily be persuaded. It was his own theory of alienation. He thought if he could get you to forget about where you are coming from, then He can sell you. He can actually sell anything to you. The continents of the world have sold us domains because we do not know who we are, a people without a heritage. We therefore need to connect back to our heritage in order for us to be able to understand who we are, otherwise we're not going to do well. I remember as a little boy, I went to secondary school and I couldn't find my feet because the other guys were just different from me. It was later that I knew that they were just different but not necessarily better. I came from a polygamous family, number 6 out of 20 children, and my father was very generous, having 5 wives. But the other kids had, more closely knit families, like 2 children, 3 children, and the parents were educated. But mine could not even, sign their names. And we didn't even have television sets. But I had to pretend that I had all of these things in order for me to belong. The more I tried to look at them, the more different I was. I just felt I didn't fit. It was my year 2 in secondary school that I had a break. I called a friend of mine who's a professor of chemical engineering in the US at this time. I called him and I owned up. I said, my parents were poor and they're not educated and we don't have a television set. The guy cried. He said, my goodness, you've sold us a dummy all along. I said, yes, but I am owning up now. He said, how do we tell every other person? I said, let's blow it up. Let them know who I am. Do you know from there on, having discovered where I was coming from, who I was, I had the freedom and the liberty to express myself. They made a jest of me that I was an Ibadan boy and I couldn't speak English. They said I was not only a bad speaker of English, I was also lousy. 2 years after, I became the school's orator, representing the school in quizzes and debates. But that break never came until I accepted me. I accepted my brand of English that would call church saucy, that would say shout instead of shout. But today, what was my greatest weakness is my strength. And it came out of not neglecting my past, not erasing it, but studying it, understanding it, accepting it, and correcting where the faults were. So we need to conceptualize leadership in Africa. We need to see...
May we all rise as we receive the Chancellor, Covenant University, Dr. David Oyedepo. Please put your hands together for him as he comes into the auditorium. You're welcome, sir. You may please be seated.
Thank you. You're welcome. So we need to understand the colonial era. They came with their interventions. And one of the speakers told us about what happened. The concept of assimilation and all those other, the concept of substitution, the indirect rule and all of that were interventions. And then came the subjugation, so that we would behave like them. We had to wear their clothes and all that, do all of their things. And the goal was for us to abandon our heritage, and we did. And it's so sad that when we have lost our heritage, we also lose our essence. We will no longer be able to think straight. So what do we need to do? We need to understand that to rethink our leadership, we need to see differently. We need to begin to understand that leadership is not what our political class shows us. It is not the madness that is in the marketplace that is leadership. Neither is it the one we see in some of the churches. We need to understand that leadership is a discipline, and it is a deliberate thing. And we've got to get to a stage in which each of us have to learn how to exert special influence in a group in which we find ourselves. And it's already been said over and over that leadership and authority do not necessarily sync. Those who are leaders in a company, in a group, may be those who do not have positions. And how do we do that? We need to realize that one of the things leaders do is to disrupt cultures. And there are so many cultures within our nation, within our states today that should be disrupted. And none of us here should feel inadequate to be able to do so. What else is leadership, you want to ask me? Okay. All right. What else is leadership? It's also providing solution. So what's the way forward? We have to do everything. We've got to have a paradigm shift and move from transactional leadership to transformational leadership. Transactional leadership is, you do it for me, I'll do it for you. It's all about me. It's what I can get from it, the benefits that accrue to me. But we've got to see the selflessness that is in leadership and explore that to the limit. And that means creating the right environment. And it starts with the individual. We've got to have an encounter like I had back in, Form 2 in my secondary school, in which each of us, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, who am I? Where am I coming from? I hope one of those things you will realize is that you're a creature of God, and then you have the ability to do things, to change things. Because it says, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, exercise dominion. Those are characteristics of a leader. I hope you will discover that. I hope you will also discover that your Nigerianness, your Africanness, and celebrate that. Because nobody else will celebrate it for you if you don't. And I hope you will be able to see that you are a solution provider and not part of the problem. In 30 years of doing business, I have not taken a bribe or given bribe to anyone. And guess what? My wife is not complaining. She changes her wardrobe anytime she wants to. All right? Okay, come on. Could you help me? I have just 1 minute. Come on, guys. All right. From an individual, then you move into a community in which you want to impart. And the opportunities are there within the family to impart, within the church setting, within the school. And then beyond that, you have the larger society, and your influence begins to grow in the region, in the state, in the local government, across the nation. And that can go on to the African continent, and globally, we can begin to see the influence that you bear. The truth is that you have it on the inside of you. All of these, the social, economic, and political leadership principles, as well as practices, can ooze out from those of us who are here today. I want to let you know that a tree does not make a forest, but a tree can start a forest. You may start as a one person, but through the power of relationships with other people, you can bring people who will work together with you. In closing, the critical mass, as everyone has mentioned here, is about the young people. Africa still remains the youngest continent in the world. 60% of the population is below 25. This is one large army that is too difficult for us to ignore. We must do something about it. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Put those hands together once again for Mr. Abiodun Fijabi, the CEO, Lord Princely Associates, Nigeria. Indeed, our Chancellor has often mentioned to us that leadership is not about titles, but rather about taking responsibilities and tasks assigned to an office. To take us on also in the next presentation will be by Dr. Adebisi Adewale. He's from the Faculty of School of Business and Enterprise, University of the West of Scotland, United Kingdom. Please put your hands together for him as he comes forward. Dr. Adebisi is an academic and a professor of procurement and supply chain strategy at the University of West of Scotland, United Kingdom. He's also the deputy director in charge of training, enterprise and finance at the Center of African Research on Enterprise and Economic Development, the University of West Scotland. He's a fellow of the British Higher Education Academy, chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and also a member of the Nigerian Institute of Management. Sir, you're welcome to make your presentation. Lead us on and speak to us about the trajectories of governance, political and corporate templates in securing Africa's future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have similar plight with my previous speakers. My time is being cut to half. But I'll try my best, but I don't promise, because I prepared for 30 minutes. But let's start off with, let's look at the issues confronting Africa and why the leaders in Africa have been really under criticisms for many years. The issue of poverty, disease, poor governance, and poor leadership has been really something that is critical to Africa. So in the light of the prevailing problems then, we can see that the future of Africa is, I hate to say it's not bright, because in my paper it is very bright. And I'm not going to be able to explain everything, because I have to skip through many things from here now. So the future of Africa is bright, but we've got to get things right. Just excuse me, I forgot my glasses there. Sorry, I didn't bring it.
This is a government purportedly fighting corruption. Therefore, it is imperative
sorry about that.
of the European Coalition for Security and Democracy in Nigeria
Thank you.
to recommend
Thank you very much.
One, that the EU and other countries must stop banking stolen money from Africa. Two,
so yeah, our leaders in Africa, we have very, very common problems. And what are the elements of these problems? I'd mention a few, but also there's inappropriate policies, bad governance, lack of integrity, incompetence, ineffective, and something that wraps it up, corruption, just to mention a few. So I will be actually looking at corruption and how it has constituted a corrosive hindrance on leadership in Africa. That's what I'm going to examine. So what then do we say corruption is? I know that since yesterday we've had different views about what corruption is, and from my perspective, corruption is any conduct that allows dishonesty, falsification, illicit benefits, manipulations, misapplications in any form, unnecessary self-gratification, or undue personal gains. So generally, corruption is a form of dishonesty or criminal activity undertaken by a person or organization entrusted with a position of authority. That is what corruption is. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to elaborate much on this. Then we go on to say that corruption threatens sustainable development. It's very, very much a threat to sustainable development. It threatens, I've had people talking about values and morals. Corruption threatens our morals. Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Corruption threatens sustainable development, ethical values, and justice, both legal and social justice. It destabilizes the society and endangers the rule of law. And when we talk about leadership, there are many definitions, different definitions as much as people had who have tried to define it. Some people said leadership is the capacity of a human community to share its future, and specifically to sustain the significant processes of change required to do so. This means a change of policy and the governmental system that will strengthen institutions rather than strengthen individual leaders. Other people argue that leadership is the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. While some people actually said it is the ability of a person to influence a group towards achieving a common goal. We can see in these few definitions or descriptions that leadership is about the leader having insight and having vision that will carry people along with them. And a leader cannot actually lead unless the people want him or her to lead. But there is one definition, one person who actually described leadership. He said, leadership is an affluence relationship among leaders and collaborators who intend significant changes that reflect their mutual purposes. Affluence relationship. People who are above others. And collaborators who intend significant changes that only suit their own purposes. So what this means, what this translates to is that leaders should never get too close to the people. What we always hear is keep a distance. Keep a distance. Once you become a leader, just keep a distance. So in the context of Africa, this is what we often see. Leaders, when they get to the position where they are, they forget the people on whom they actually rose to that position. So they leave them behind and they don't listen to them any longer. Is this the kind of leadership that we should have in Africa? I say no. Leaders must be transparent. There must be freedom of information. People must be empowered. And people must be allowed to participate in how they are governed, or how they are ruled, or how they are managed in corporate organizations. This thing is achievable. And the thing is, if you are a leader and you stay up there on the mountain looking down on other people, you are separated. You are isolated and lonely. But the fact is that if you are leading others and you are lonely, then you are not leading people. If you don't have people who are willingly supporting you, then you don't have anyone to lead, and you must not actually, you're not doing it right. So to have leaders to actually involve people and to carry people along, that leader needs courage. Leadership courage is essential. A leader, as a manager of innovation and change, and who operates at a higher stage of moral development, should focus on the needs of the followers and universal ethical principles of that society. Otherwise, they are not leading. Leaders who have courage will not work for their own personal gains. They will work for the common good. So, placing ahead oneself above the people is not the hallmark for good leadership. Good leadership is very demanding and it's very complex. It involves the willingness to put oneself at risk. And this risk will involve taking responsibility while others are making excuses. It involves seeing the possibility in a solution or in a situation while others are seeing the limitations. It is about readiness to stand out in the crowd. It requires open mind and integration of hearts, head and soul. It needs evoking in others the capacity to dream, the capacity to care, and in caring, the capacity to liberate ideas, energy, and capacity of others to achieve a common goal. So leadership is above all courageous. And although the scale and nature of the challenges leaders face differ from situation to situations, however, the requirements for good leadership worldwide are the same. So being a real leader then means learning who you are and what you stand for, and then having the courage to act. But only a deep devotion to a cause or a purpose of the common good can spark that courage. Current leaders demonstrate confidence and commitment in what they believe and what they do. True leaders suppress their own personal fears and insecurity to give hope and strength to the people who had become demoralized and helpless. They lead by example. They pull their head forward. Although in this day and age in Africa, there have been a lot of pervasiveness of ethical leadership and leaders in Africa. The continent can still boast of good leaders in the past. And I want to refer to the quotes from Nelson Mandela, with full respect to my previous presenter. They say that a leader is not without honor, except amongst his own people. The rest of us in Africa, and probably the rest of the world, we see Mandela through a different eyes. From what he says, at that time, what he said, and how we see him demonstrated leadership to liberate his people. We have Nelson Mandela, some quotes from Nelson Mandela there. It says that there can be no greater gift than that of giving one's time and energy to help others without expecting anything in return. He also said that what counts in life is not mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. Can we go up a bit? If you want to be, where is that? It's that if you want the cooperation of humans around you, you must make them feel they are important. And you do that by being genuine, honest, and humble. And this Maxwell, who actually said almost the same thing. Few leaders are successful unless the people want them to be successful. Committing a great truth to memory is admirable. Committing it to life is wisdom. I'll go from there because but as we have great leaders such as Nelson Mandela in my own notes, we had also Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, we have Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe from Nigeria, we have Alhaji Tafawa Balewa, we had Chief Obafemi Awolowo, We also recently had, Kofi Annan, yes, and some other good leaders like that, yes. So I'm going to skip. As we have those good leaders, we also, unfortunately, in this day and age, we have some leaders who are still demonstrating that they're above those they lead, and they're not actually possibly serving their own people conscientiously and with honesty. I will actually flag the past president of the Gambia, Yahya Jammeh, who actually changed his mind about after a democratic election not to actually relinquish power. He congratulated the winner, and later, a few days later, he changed his mind. He said he's not going anywhere. So he needed a sum of force to get him out. We had other leaders like Samuel Doe. We had in Kenya recently, early this year, we had 2 presidents at a time. We had 2 presidents. One was democratically elected president. The other one declared himself as the president of the people. So chaos and confusion actually carried on for some time in Kenya. The experience of Kenya demonstrated how corruption can tip a seemingly stable African country into political crisis. So, but here in Nigeria, and I'm going to go through, we have our own experiences. Like South Africans who have your own experiences, we have our own experience of our leaders. We have in our National Assembly, people we have 109 senators. Each of them take away 35 million per month. That 35 million will pay 20,000, half of that 35 million, half of it, not the whole 35 million, will pay 20,000 young people in employment. And they will go home with 95,000 naira monthly. In the National House of Representatives, we have 306. Yes, we have that. 360. We have 360 House of Representative members. Half of their salary, they take away 25 million every month. Half of their salary will pay 50,000 young people who are unemployed. They will pay them, they will fully employed, and they will go home with 95,000 per month. So, and these leaders are still fighting for themselves. Most of the laws they made were just about themselves. They stayed up there, and they're looking at us down here. That's just a few examples. I'm going to rush. I'm going to rush now. What we need, what do we need? We need strong institutions, independent institutions. We need strong independent institutions. In Nigeria, for example, I'm going to come to Nigeria again, we have the EFCC, we have the ICPC, and I'm certain there are similar organizations or some similar institutions in other parts of Africa, but are they allowed to work? This institution must be strengthened, backed by law, and be free to work. Be free to work in order to inhibit growth of corruption. So, let me go. In Africa, Zambia, in 1963, the president of Zambia wrote a book. He called it Zambia Shall Be Free. Zambia shall be, I don't know how many people actually read that book among the young ones. We read it in secondary school. Today, Zambia has been taken over by the Chinese due to unpaid aid. It's been taken over by the Chinese. So, since 1963, when that promise came, Zambia shall be free. Zambia is still in worse situation than what it was in 1963 today. So, and you see African governments, shortly after that, you see other African heads of presidents recently, about 2 or 3 months ago, went to China. All of them, they went there to beg for aid. What do we need in Africa? Do we need aid? We do not need aid in Africa. What we need is trade and investment. We do not need trade in Africa. And the question is, these African presidents and leaders, they know, like someone said yesterday, we can see it coming, but we are not doing anything. We're just sitting down there. Instead of saying, oh, it's happening in Zambia, it might spread to Malawi, it might spread to Botswana, let's stop it now. They sat down there, instead, embrace it, and they went to take their own share of aid from China. So, you know, aid is nothing but enslavement. Aid is not, someone said yesterday, there was no aid without something to pay back. Aid is nothing but enslavement. So why doesn't Africa create opportunities within Africa? These are my questions. Why doesn't Africa trade with Africa? Why won't we create jobs for our own young people? Why won't we have effective social services in place and take care of the elderly, the young, and the disabled? Why are we not having world-class hospitals to deliver good quality healthcare services? Why do we need to travel overseas all the time we are sick? Our leaders. That is not a good example of leaders. So, what should we do? I want to say that Africa is a clean slate for development. Africa is a clean slate for development. And the future is bright for Africa. The continent is very massive. It is the second largest continent in the world after Asia. Africa is the only continent where you can build Fortune 500 companies within 5 years. The Chinese, through courage and commitment and innovation, built their own countries. When the Western world, Europe and America, were busy in the last 20 years waging wars in Asia and North Africa, the Chinese were steadily and systematically engaged in economic diplomacy to take over Africa's economy. So, you know, and Chinese succeeded in this. They succeeded. So, to go on, what recipes do we have? What recipes do we have? Why? Why do we have, what recipes do we have? In the context of the current social, economic, and technological development, African leaders in every sphere must demonstrate deep devotion, courage, and commitment larger than their personal aggrandizement. That is very important. I've heard people say, we cannot fight corruption. We can, in my own view. In my own view, yes, we can. We can if you are ready to actually build a strong continent. While after independence and countries go back to nation building, we were praying when Japan was developing technology. We were casting words on demons and Lucifer. When India was actually developing, we were carried away with religion. My good friend said yesterday or this morning, someone from America wrote a book, Religion, Trade and what? Yeah, Christianity, trade and religion, whatever. And the context of that book is how to use religion to capture Africa, because Africa are too emotional with religion. And isn't that true? We need public integrity and accountability. Integrity is critical to political, economic, and social structures. We also need international, institutional, we need the mindset, the correct mindset of the youth. Unfortunately, the youth these days, we talk about corruption, we all talk about it, but the youths are not doing anything. Instead, they embrace it. They cannot wait for their own turn to actually plunder. And that is the truth. They cannot wait for their own turn to plunder. So we need to change this mindset. It's hard to be changed. And I've had someone who said, we need to go back to those days when they taught civics, your responsibility to your country. We need to go back to those days. That's where to start from. And parents at home need to engage in that. We need to establish independent corruption agencies. I've mentioned that alone. We need to strengthen existing, democratic institutions. A situation where the executive and the legislature are engaged in adversarial relationships at the detriment of the people should not be. Government ministries must overhaul their method of operations. Mechanism for accountability must be established. Above all, we must reduce our dependency on foreign aid. We must. Rwanda actually is a good example of that. When the President Paul Kagame had started to introduce internal tax and revenue so that it can be more responsible, accountable to the people. And just the last few things, our leaders must respect the Constitution. We have a Constitution. We must respect the Constitution. That must be rule of law. Nobody should be above that. And then there is need, above all, for the political will. The political will must be there for our leaders. And to round up, I'm going to do bullet point of 5 points. I'm not explaining it. I'm just going to mention them just to round up. 5 key ingredients to stop corruption and enhance leadership in Africa. 1, end impunity. Leadership with impunity, end it. Make laws effective. Law enforcement, make it effective. There must be reform of our system. People talk about restructuring, they talk about constitutional reform and so on and so forth. A form of reform must be there. I have explanation of it, but I am not going to go into that because time is gone now. However, we need to promote transparency. We need to promote transparency and access to information, freedom of the press, empower people to ask questions and tell the people in power when it is enough. Flag the red flag. No, we don't want that. Yes? And then, close international loopholes. International loopholes where money is going, laundering. Stop launderers. Stop them with strong laws. So this is where I'm going to stop. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adebisi Adewale. Please, sir, you want to take a seat here. Thank you very much for that presentation on Africa's leadership trajectories, governance, political and corporate templates in securing Africa's future. Indeed, he dwelt on tackling corruption in Africa. And at this point in time, I would like to take 2 comments, reactions, and responses to these presentations, perhaps one for each of the presenters. Yes, Ms. Okon, and this is for who? Dr. Adebisi, thank you.
I want to make a comment on what he said about the youth waiting their turn. As far as I'm concerned, the youth's turn is now. Our turn is now. Because at what point, is it when we're adults you expect us to now come into that role? Our time would have been surpassed. So I think you need to give us more perspective when you say the youth should wait their turn. Because many people here are, say, from 18 to, say, 30, 35. By the time you cross 35, you've lost the opportunity to have any impact that you want to have as a youth. So I need to understand what you mean when you say the youth should wait their turn.
Thank you very much. The second comment for the two other presenters.
Thank you very much. I
This is
actually
for
want
who?
to, Austin Uzim, I'm addressing Shabalala.
Thank you.
All right, and also the doctor that just spoke last. I want to really commend the youth of Africa. All right? They are doing amazingly well. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, those leaders have failed. Our youth have not. Because I have seen a 15-year-old boy who in his secondary school have manufactured an electric incubator that can hatch eggs. That is not the president we are talking about. A youth, a little kid. I've also seen a young boy who uses physics from pig to generate gas. A lot of our youths are doing amazingly well. We just have people that have mounted roadblocks for us. Then Shabalala said on her quote that it takes a significant amount of madness to transform Africa. And I agree with her, because in African Transporter Initiative, my organization, we brand ourselves with a mantra that says, we are mad. And what that simply means is making a difference. So you have to be mad to change Africa.
Thank you.
And we are mad. If you want to be mad, you join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take the last comment, and that should be for Mr. Fijabi. Up there, please. Is this for Mr. Fijabi, please?
Yeah, but I have a question for... So
Okay.
to begin with the first speaker, one of my friends who's a writer has said, we have been colonized, now we have to compromise. And I would like to ask you, up to what extent can we compromise? Should Africa be isolationist in order to be able to look inwards, or do we have to compromise? And to what extent can we compromise with Western powers? To Mr. Fijabi, or rather, to the second speaker, I meant to say, or the third rather, please. You've talked about leaders being merchants of hope. The British filmmaker Adam Curtis has made a film with the title Hypernormalization, in which it seems to him that the present leaders are absolutely confused with the current complexities that the world is facing. And instead, they're selling to us an alternate reality of a much simplified version of the world. And they do this by a lot of oratory and a lot of selling of hope. Would you call that hope? And how do we face the current complexities of the world without running away from them?
Very much, says you want to respond and react to this comment.
Thank you very much. So that's the last questioner. Let me quickly cite an example. I carry a culture that I value as a Yoruba man. My elderly one always complained that I normally would love to go down to greet them. But here am I meeting with Americans, and I had to address Pat, an 80-year-old man. I have to call him Pat by his name, or try to stand up for an elderly man in the bus, and he shouted and screamed at you, "Sit down, I'm not an invalid." All right, so when your culture meets other people's cultures, you have to make up your mind how far you're going to go with them. But if you do not have a culture and you do not respect your culture, you will accept anything. But the fact that you have to negotiate it, it's enough reason for you to believe that you are an authentic person. So I looked at Pat and I said, "Can I call you Pa?" He said, "No, I don't want Pa." "So what will you want?" He said, "Pat." I said, "Well, it's going to be difficult for me. So can we work on this in the next 2-3 weeks and see whether we will be able to agree on this area?" I have maintained my Nigerianness, my Yorubaness. I love the culture that I'm coming from. It is not against the scriptures to which I subscribe. These are the things that make me unique and distinct, and I'm not going to negotiate it away easily. Now, how about the issue, lastly, how about the issue of somebody looking down on you because you're black? I have faced it terribly. But you know, I've always wanted, because I look at you that is discriminating against me, that is looking at me, looking down on me as the one that needs help, not me. And oftentimes I've asked my friends, I said, what's your challenge? And I do it with a smile. I said, do you have any problem? I said, no, it's okay. And then one said, how come you speak good English? I said, there is a bird in Nigeria called English. If it for a considerable length of time, then your tongue will just change and you begin to speak English. He said, wow, that's awesome. And I could imagine how ignorant she was. Even my mother would not believe that story.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, okay. Right. Thank you for that question about youths. Actually, the time for youth was yesterday. Today, and tomorrow. But I'll give you a few examples. And by my examples, I'm not saying youths are all the same. Yesterday, I was a youth. My generation lost it. Today, probably slightly a bit above youth. You understand? But it's still not in my hand. Few years ago, if you asked a primary school student, a pupil, or a secondary school student, what do you want to be in the future? That time military was ruling us. He would say, I want to be a soldier. Why? Because I want to be a commissioner. Outside his or her military calling. And why does he want to be a commissioner? Because he wants to, eat from the cake. About a few years ago, in London, Nigerian team came to play Charlton, at Charlton Stadium. And they had pamphlets, booklets like this, and I went with my family. And when we got there, we saw this young, like maybe 11, 12-year-old young boy. I said, oh, where did you get that from? He said, they're selling it. How much? He said, £2. And I gave him £2. I got the pamphlet. On getting to the gate, the pamphlets were free. Free of charge. And I said to my own children, I said, don't do that. Do not do that. So, youth always have their own time. It never ends. It is in their hands to challenge. I'm happy for one thing. This is the first time in the history of Nigeria that young people are coming together in a political party to try to change the system. But those ones that have been there, they are not allowed. They pass not too young to run. It is not true. Sorry to say. It isn't. Because, you know why? Just to show your intention that you want to contest, 15 million. To buy a form, 25 million, making 35 million. Where is the youth who is just finishing university is going to be allowed to do that? Just one example more. Still in the UK, in Scotland, one lady won her constituency election as an MP. At the time she was writing her final examination paper, she did not to spend 1p to anybody. Now, our political parties and contestants, they spend millions to buy votes, to buy hearts of people. Youths participate in this. They got money. It could be due to anything, poverty and so, but they got the money. So why don't they say, no, stop that? We don't want that. Like the chairman of conference said yesterday, there must be a time when someone will flag it. No, we don't want that. Stop it. And it cannot be gifted. The youth have to stand up and face it and challenge it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Your comments, ma'am.
Thank you. I think on the madness, I didn't say it, Sankara did, but I can confirm it took madness from me to walk away from being the first female admiral waiting to be chief of the Navy, to question myself and say, but how am I benefiting my people here? It took a certain level of madness for me to be an MP, which I'm still supposed to be till next year, to look at my party and say, but how are you spending constituency funding, which is funding for development, and we are using the credit card of the economic freedom fighters. Malima is corrupt, by the way. He knows I've said this in several platforms. We are using that credit card to buy liquor for women at Cubana, one of the famous restaurants in South Africa. It took madness from me to walk away into unemployment. I've actually come to a point where in my madness I say I am not unemployed, I am unemployable, because I shall not bow down to any form of demonism in whatever shape or color. So it does take madness in this continent to stand for the right thing. I think it took madness for me to come here and tell you that Mandela is not your hero, by the way. The people you should be looking towards is Steve Biko. Why do we have a Mandela Day? You should ask yourself this. Why do we have a Mandela Day and it's international, but we don't have a Steve Biko Day? Who sacrificed more? Steve Biko paid with his life. His family is still poor. Mandela walks out of this thing a millionaire. So out of the struggle, he actually gained and lost nothing. People say he spent 27 years in jail. Do you know there are South Africans who spend time in jail more than him? I'm sure you don't, because CNN didn't tell you that. Now, should we be isolationist or integrative? I don't even know how this question comes up. You see, it's our cognitive dissonance at play again. China didn't ask itself, should we be integrative or isolationist? China realized we are sitting here as the, this filthy, stinky tent of the world. What do we need to do? Shut ourselves in and fix our mess. Africa has always been integrative. The Arabs came here in 642 AD, 1,370 something years. The Europeans came here in 1400, over 6 centuries. We have always been integrationist at the benefit of the Arab and the European colonizer. Isn't it high time maybe that we shut our borders and say, let's fix our mess, we shall reopen them again? Because people who have developed have done that. Japan did it. China did it. Why can't we do the same? Why is it that Africans, when you tell them about Afrocentrism or Pan-Africanism, they always want to challenge you and tell you, oh, but the world is there, oh, but foreign direct investment, oh, but how has it benefited us to date? Because we are not uniting as a continent, because in the AU, we sit as ex-Francophone, and France will sneeze and those countries will catch the cold. Nothing happens in Francophone unless France says you can do it. Do you know that all former French colonies have to send every year a ledger of their reserves, a ledger of how they spent the money? They report to France. Do you know, sitting here, that 14 former French colonies still pay what is called civilization tax to France? They borrow money from the IMF and World Bank to pay France for civilizing them when they are the most underdeveloped area of Africa. Now, we sit like that. Anglophone, we think we are better than Francophone. Ne? The class system in Anglophone countries stinks. We are British in everything that we do. We love the accolades, we love the power. Can I tell you, I walked away from being an MP to get a doctorate, not because I believe in the power of this education. I'm sorry. I only did it so that I can stand in front of people like you and you will not say, but who's this woman? But never for a second did I fool myself that what I know about Africa, what I know about Mandela, I shall be taught through this UNESCO education. See, a guy released the book in 1933, Carter Woodson, African-American, called The Miseducation of the Negro. He says there are 2 types of education. The one we are given, which is not very potent, that's why we are still here, and the one you give yourselves. I thank people like Covenant, because they are trying to match the 2. But still, you need to go further and educate yourself.
Thank you, thank you. You may please take your seats now. Thank you for the stimulating presentations. For the Chancellor's speech, it will be my honor to, at this point, invite the Vice Chancellor of Covenant University, Professor A. Atayaro, for the next assignment.
You will all agree with me that it has been a very interesting day with a lot of impactful presentations. But there's something about the last course of the meal. That is when you get everything you need to actually get things digested. It is a privilege to have in our midst a leading leader, the Chancellor of Covenant University, with some nuggets to help us make a difference without losing our sanity. Shall we rise as I call the Chancellor of Covenant University, Dr. David Oyedepo, for his speech.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I called the Vice Chancellor and said, I don't want this thing to stop. I was the one who sent the message. We are saying the same thing. And hearing from several other sources helps to push it. One of my fundamental ideologies is that it doesn't have to be white to be right. I've lived with that all my life. Covenant University has no foreign input in any form. Its founding, its philosophies, its structures, as indigenous as where they come from. Someone once observed, excellence is the greatest deterrent to racism and sexism. That was Oprah. Was her name? Winfrey. It's time for Africans to come awake and take our destinies in our hands. It's time to come out of the woods for once. Others will only take advantage of us. Their interest is to see how much they can make out of us. And so we go from place to place in talk shops. Joshua said, what have you said? Johnson can't talk for me. He doesn't know my pains. He can't feel my pains. I felt I lost a lot by not being seated throughout because of demands here and there. But every moment I've been here since yesterday has been so awesome. I was supposed to give this paper yesterday. I said, no, let's avoid constipation. You had enough. Let's go. And you don't have to put me on today at all because everybody's saying the same thing because we are going the same way. Africa shall be saved. Amen. Our generation will see the transformation of this continent. Amen. We will not be dead to see it. Amen. And we will be major players in the process. Amen. Everybody, young and old. Please help me one more time, give a round of applause to the presenters of this last segment. And the very smart reactions and questions from the audience. Come on, give them a big hand. Shall we please be seated? I'm supposed to be speaking to this subject, African future. My idea is that from this conference, there shall be an emergence of new generation of leaders who will take responsibility to begin the adventure right now. The future starts today. What we put in today determines what we are going to meet tomorrow. Driving Africa's future revolutionary pathways towards a redefinition of leadership in Africa. Without any doubt, we've had a series of definitions here. And they all appear to fit in to the objective of this conference. And we need to take this redefinition seriously. Otherwise, we never have a change of position. The future of Africa, or the present Africa, has been deeply virused. And the worst of this virus is corruption. What it does, according to scripture, is it blinds the eyes, blinds the mind. Where you are given to corruption, you are blinded. You can't see realities. You can't see anything ahead of you. And how much progress can a blind man make? That's why we have remained objects of pity in most part. You are in a race with people with two eyes and you are blind. How far can you go? You can't be leading a blind man to run. No. You will only go at the speed of the one leading him. Just this morning, I got a video of a Nigerian addressing the European Union on the corruption status of Nigeria. Studio, if you want, please play that for us. It's about 3 minutes.
I'd like to pass the floor to the next speaker.
I am Frederick Omoy Madurige, representing the Nelson Mandela Human Rights Association. What is called colonialism in Africa is what I call the genesis of terrorism. Today, we have a new dimension of colonialism as African leaders continue to impose themselves in power and to steal and hide money in European banks. It took Switzerland 20 years of litigation and foot dragging before they reluctantly repatriated $1.4 billion stolen and hidden in their banks by the late Nigerian military head of state, General Sani Abacha. Interest from that amount was lost. Report shows that $1 trillion is stolen yearly by African leaders and hidden abroad, while Africans desperately try to escape from their various countries through the Mediterranean Sea. Today, Nigerian senators earn more than any European president because they ingeniously appropriate emoluments and earnings to themselves against national and international law. It is forbidden under paragraph 2 of Article 8 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption for public officers to engage in self-dealing with emoluments that are unacceptable under international law. Nigeria is signatory to that convention. what Nigerian senators earn in 4 years is enough to build 18 hospitals in each of the 36 states of Nigeria. Sadly, President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria has spent 107 days in the United Kingdom to seek medical treatment without publicly disclosing his expenses, which he took from national treasury. This is a government purportedly fighting corruption. Therefore, it is imperative on behalf of the European Coalition for Security and Democracy in Nigeria to recommend as follows. 1. That the EU and other countries must stop banking stolen money from Africa. 2. That the EU and other countries must seriously consider placing travel bans on Nigerian senators and their families. 3. All financial assistance to Nigeria must be urgently reviewed. We receive financial assistance, we borrow, we receive astonishing revenue, we have unmatched natural resources, yet we have become the poverty capital of the world as 6 Nigerians slide into poverty every minute, while 44 Indians get out of poverty every minute. Lastly, we Africans must begin to seriously hold our leaders accountable. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Isn't that classic, informative? I'm glad I didn't give this address yesterday. What we do in all of this is to be as current as we can on issues around us. The same yesterday, there was this posting on WhatsApp around the country, $30 billion misappropriated by the present government through various segments. Get that up, please. Very sickening data. The various departments, do you know that over $50 billion has been misappropriated under the present administration in Nigeria? That went viral yesterday to the world. Now that came through those various departments, subsidy fraud, unauthorized NMPC contracts, NHIS scam, Pine Fund, bird flu scam, you can't find the people to whom they gave the money. All that. That's how dicey our situation is in this part of the world. The subject that brought votes to this government was anti-corruption. Everybody is corrupt. That's what they say, except them. We've never seen a level of corruption of this scale in the history of our country. That's why we must begin to explore various ways of securing the future of Africa. I'm the last to believe that poverty is what makes a man steal. It's lack of character. Not every poor Nigerian is a thief. It's character. I'm sure you enjoyed Professor Peter Okebokra's presentation. Okay, we have some brainstorming session in my place on how do we deal with this problem. It is fundamental. We have to start from the beginning. So the idea is, look, let's put up together a character development curriculum that will start from nursery and start building up. They say to a crippled man that your luggage is bent. He said, no, it's from the beginning, it's not the head. Amen. A crippled man cannot carry straight luggage on his head. We have this problem, it's fundamental, it's deep-rooted, and we must just face it, lest we be phased out. It is wisdom to address the issues that surround us with knowledge. We have a problem, let's deal with it by retraining and reprogramming our children to hate and detest it. Africa will take 5 steps forward and take 10 steps backward. And we pride ourselves in saying Rome is not built in a day, but Rome started one day. When will Africa start? Rome started one day. When are we going to start? Oh, we are colonized. Since when? Since when? Many European universities are behind Covenant today. Many in America. Covenant is now within 3% world leading universities in the world. How? There is no Mr. Jones and Mr. Jack doing it here. It's all taking responsibility to rewrite the university education in our country. By taking bold and unusual, maybe mad steps. Amen. Why do you have an army of first class in Covenant? You can't telephone here. It's not permitted. Courtism, no way. Discipline, not negotiable. Attendance in lectures, compulsory. You go below the required percentage, you can't write exam. You come again next year if there is space. Exam malpractice, summary dismissal, no negotiation. Oh, it won't work. Stop that. You don't step out, you won't know whether it will work or not. But we'd rather shut down the university than not allow it to work. That's what we need to rewrite the story of Africa. Everybody standing in his own place, in our own place, and making his and our own contribution with all zeal and zest, with the good of the people at heart. In case I heard very well, there is this notion about perhaps we pray and we fast while others are working. Now, let me say this to you, and I think you will catch it. South Korea in 1945 had a population of 12 million, and was one of the poorest nations in the world. Then revival broke out. By 1985, now that time, the GDP of South Korea was $50 and was one of the poorest nations in the world. At that time, they had 5% of their population as Christians, which translated to 400,000 only. Now, by 1985, population had grown to 48 million. The population of Christianity has grown to 25% from 5%, making 12 million Christians, influencing the country with light from heaven, and GDP has jumped to $7,000, making her the 13th industrialized nation in the world, from behind the line. Something jumped. So there are quite a number of platforms that transform lives in an enduring manner. Remove Christianity, nothing endures. And I'm telling you the truth. I'm a student of Christian influence since human history. And since it began. The influence uncheckered. Now, what do we call Harvard today? It was a minister's college. It was to train ministers. Harvard has been up there ever since with the most robust program. Yes, most of them have shifted ground, but they will return. But what made them was their foundation in the truth. You know what Jesus said? As long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. I must say this. It is that same Jesus depth that has built Covenant and has built Landmark University and has built our secondary school network of schools. Our school scored the highest in JAM this year. Faith Academy out here. The highest in JAM nationwide was scored here. So there's a positive influence of Christianity on human existence. I'm a product of that truth. Michael Faraday, one of the greatest brains that ever lived, didn't have a degree. The influence of divine light made him. He was a lab attendant. He became the embassy professor in no time. Christianity is an eternal plus, particularly real faith, not fake faith. Bible-rooted faith. Revelation, cultivated faith. Get excited. The greatest brains on this continent, a number of them will rise from here. I've said that a long time. It will be foolhardy for a university of 10 years to say that within the next 10 years they'll be among the top 10 universities in the world. And it's unveiling, it's unfolding before our eyes. That is a positive influence of the faith. Get excited about it. When it's time, tell me, because I'm just sharing with you my thoughts. And then I'm eager also to go. I have other things to do. So when it's time, just don't need to stand here, just signify. You signify. And then we'll be on. So we have that opportunity to take advantage of the faith to scale any height in life. Any height in life. Thank God for effort, but except the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain that builds it. We are going places. We are going places, and we'll get there. Now, back to the subject of the day. Please go ahead. Africa's future. Just yesterday night, I was checking through my place, and I've located this book that talked about 100 ideas that changed the world. It's a publication by Time magazine, copyright 2014 or 2010. And the eighth of them, number 8 of these 100 ideas was democracy. People have always thought democracy is a Western, phenomenon. No. No. It began in Greece. Almost everything in the ancient world, men and women were ruled by emperors, kings, and pharaohs. But then we have this group of people in Greece where many of the city-states adopted a form of government they called democratia. From the Greek word demos, meaning the people, and kratis, meaning rule. This was developed in Athens as a form of government where they elect senators, councillors, and all of that to be part of the debate of running their various cities. And so, having tried all forms of government, and they were all under tension, the West adopted it because the power of the King of England was becoming excessive. That's how it came. And that came before 6 BC, around 6 BC. So it's been long here with us. And like I mentioned yesterday, I believe that was promulgated to checkmate excesses of these emperors, of these kings, of these pharaohs that will do whatever they want and make away with it. Without any doubt, that has informed rapid development, or that informed rapid development in most of those developed countries. We can make it work here. And we should make it work here. Otherwise, we are doomed as a people. I love the word ideas. Ideas rules the world. Ideas rule the world. Let's freely share ideas on how to move this continent forward. Let's freely share ideas. There is no one that knows it all. Let's freely share ideas. Young people, get together, share ideas. How do we move the nation forward? Not reactionaries. What can we do to make it happen? Let's have multidisciplinary platforms where we think through on how to make this thing work. Power put in the hand of one man can be very disruptive. So it must remain a people-ruled continent. We must deliver this continent from these pharaohs that won't let go. Otherwise, we have been in power for 41 years, 48 years. How? How? And see people being killed every day. How? And I love the analysis of the French colonies. It's a solid case. It's a solid case. You can't lift a finger without the approval of the French. You can't. Lifelong slavery. You can't. I got to one of those countries. They have break between 1 and 5. I can't remember. Is it 1 and 4? So where do you work? How much you lose worth? You leave office, you go to sleep, you now come back, trying to wake up. And then the office hour is gone. They are all policies of enslavement. And unfortunately, as long as they endorse them to continue in power, yeah. God have mercy. The Anglophone country don't know what they have. Don't know what to have. Can anybody send for you now, if you are not a criminal, to come over to London? You say, why? You say, I'm your colonial master. You say, since when? When did we agree on it? No. That's how backward this continent has been. They say you are free. You say, I don't want to be free. Let me be here. Let me try to give an intro and then I run to my submissions and then we close. Now, please help me. If you are there in the studio, please help out. Get me straight to the subject, please. Quickly. Driving Africa's future. We've talked a lot about what is leadership, but let me just contribute this in 2 minutes. I've tried to define leadership as not talking the lead, but taking the lead. The question is, who is here to take the lead in moving this place forward? Leadership is not talking the lead, it's taking the lead. Leadership is all about taking the lead, setting the pace, and blazing the trail in one's field. Everybody has a part to play. Let's strive for excellence in all that we do. Let's seek to get the best out of anything we do. It is taking the lead that makes a leader. Leadership is not occupying a seat, it's accomplishing a feat. Everybody should get to a point where you can appraise yourself. Am I adding value? Am I losing value? It's not occupying a position, but making outstanding contributions. Decent people should resign when they are not doing well in a public office. I mean, it's just the right thing to do. I'm sorry, I don't have capacity for this. Can I please be excused? Not in Africa. Great leaders are not those with chains of degrees, but those who change the world around them. How are you positively influencing the world around you towards good and not evil? Outstanding leaders are not those with barrage of titles, but those whose impact constitute footprints on the sand of time. What would you be remembered for whatever office you might have occupied or whatever business you are doing? What are you leaving behind? Somebody has said, politicians' minds are concerned about the next election. Only statesmen are concerned about the next generation. The bulk of our leaders across this continent don't think a dime about the coming generation. $35 million per month to a senator. Some of those who didn't go to school. Some have never made a statement once in their life because they didn't understand what they are saying. They did not even understand what they are saying. How can they contribute to a debate? 35 million. There is a particular state where they are giving 10,000 to graduate. They call them, internship. Just to be sure they give job to some people. It's an effort. 35 million. Great leaders are out of the box thinkers. I think that applies to the youth group I'm talking about. They don't think the norms. They step outside the norms. Out of the box thinkers are not committed, unusual thinkers or mad thinkers are potential leaders. It's time to begin to think beyond the now. Leadership is not just about leading the people, it's much more about taking the lead in a given task that imparts positively on human lives. Taking the lead. Taking the lead. This is why just anybody can become a leader if he's willing to give it what it takes. Just anybody can become a leader if he's willing to give it what it takes. I once made a vow, I'll never embark on any task in my life on common sense. Because the best we get out of that is common result. I've always come forth with fresh discoveries on any subject I'm speaking to, on any platform. These were gathered yesterday night. And some this morning. Now, wait. A leader without required skills is bound to be a failed leader. A leader without integrity will ditch the lead. But a leader that lacks both skill and integrity is a disaster. That's what Psalm 78 verse 72 says. He guided them by the skillfulness of his hands and by the integrity of his heart. Now we have an army of leaders at all levels that lack both. How disastrous it has been for many people in many parts of this continent. A leader without the required skill is bound to be a failed leader. A leader without integrity will ditch the lead, but a leader that lacks both skill and integrity is a disaster. I once said Rome is not built in a day, but Rome started one day. It was a reflection at Amsterdam years ago. I was in Ethiopia in 1996 because we have a mission there. I can speak to Africa very comfortably because we have missions in 41 of the nations of Africa. And we have very strong presence. When they met me with the car at the airport, the car that we bought, our mission bought, I said, "Where is the car?" They said, "It's the car." I said, "No. Is this the car you bought for so?" They said, "Yeah, that's only the kind of car you can get here." There were almost no new cars anywhere there. All the cars were smoking. You tie the door with rope. And then you find animals on the street carrying things. Just like Bible days, you're walking around. But getting back there, years later, skyscrapers fill the air. Infrastructure, everything. Why? A correct leader. A correct leader just got there and they stormed. We attended to that yesterday by the chair of this conference. Africa has not always been that praised that way. It is discovered that Africa had or led the first civilization in the world. How did we get here? We had a very rich culture, just a little bite of history, across the continent, and glorious civilizations that preceded Western civilization. Archaeological findings and excavations with homins and remains of earliest human existence have pointed to Africa as the birthplace of man. Egyptian, Kush, Nok, Monopotapa civilizations are indicators of earliest human civilizations in the world. Our empires, states, and kingdoms in pre-slave trade and pre-colonial times were massive, formidable, prosperous, and organized. African cosmology forbade stealing and corruption. Traders would leave their wares in front of their houses, and buyers would pick what they wanted and place the exact money of the value right by the side of the items bought. You tried that today? They will sit down, eat, and drink, and say, "This man must be a fool." So what went wrong? Something went wrong. Imported political values have not blended well with our traditional values. African traditional political system is at variance with the Western global democratic values. In traditional Africa, the monarchical system entrenched a political culture of absolutism of political authority. But that will not be healthy for continuity. And it was grossly abused. But we have not come out of that tentacle up to now. The people themselves have not departed from the traditional realm as they see the rulers as all in all. This is what explains the mentality of totalitarianism, autocracy, seat-tightism, nepotism and corruption, and of course, personification and personalization of power by most leaders in Africa today. It's more like a family right. This term belongs to us. We own this state. They think so and they do so. Fundamental democratic values include one man, one vote, equality of all, rule of law, fundamental human rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, independence of the judiciary, questionability of political authority. You must be accountable. You are holding in trust what belongs to all of us, so you must be accountable. The banks must give you your balances. It's their responsibility. You are in partnership. I keep my money with you so as to avoid people coming to steal it. You are trading with my money to get your profit and give me my own interest. So I must be aware. But by the time you say Your Excellency, he just believes he's excellent. That's the problem. And in our country here, everybody's executive. Executive cleaner, executive local government chairman, executive secretary of local government, executive governor, executive deputy governor, executive everybody, executive senator, executive house of. We just use titles anyhow. That makes people think you are unquestionable and answerable to nobody. This traditional siege must be broken, and we have to take steps to make it happen. All what democracy stands for is opposed to all that African traditional values stand for. Democracy kicks against authoritarian rule, yet democratically elected leaders in Africa epitomize authoritarianism. That's where we are. Democracy entrenches the rule of law, but African leaders impose the rule of men. Democracy predicates change of power by elections, but most African leaders uphold political change by selection. I put you there, you are just standing there for me, I can come back anytime. And now that you are there, you have to answer me on the following count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every contract in this state, I have 30%. So you can load it up. Everything that happens here, I have 50%. Judgment will sit. Where do we go from here? Shouldn't we start thinking about the redefined democratic rules to take into consideration our natural, social, and political climate? Can we begin to think of contextualizing leadership paradigms in a way that we tackle the traditional values that inhibit full manifestation of democratic leadership? They are all questions. The executive powers of political, absolute monarchy-like leaders can be eroded if the judiciary is truly independent. An independent judiciary ensures the sanctity of the law, gives the people covering from executive recklessness, and reduces tendencies towards democratic dictatorship, characteristic of leadership in most nation states of Africa. Should we not start thinking on the best way to enhance the place of the judiciary within the content of our democracy? Or how will a chief judge appointed by a state governor, for instance, not do the bidding of his boss? That may be possible somewhere else, but definitely not in some part of Africa. I appoint you as chief judge. When I say release that man, release him. When I say hold that man, hold him. Those things don't work here. Should the president of a nation single-handedly appoint a chief justice of the Supreme Court? When such happens, justice has been perverted. I love the bravery in South Africa. What happened recently? The judiciary should be independent for democracy to work. And the process of the emergence of the judiciary must be reviewed for that to happen. Here they can sit on a case that will never have judgment until the time that is relevant is gone. There are many cases now that they have stopped calling them. Will any case ever be brought against the president who appointed you not be in his favor? Through separation of power, we guarantee effective checks and push legislature properly to neutralize the traditional character of political power in Africa, which manifests in absolutism, unquestionability of the executive branch. Should we not start thinking of raising the legislative bar for political office at all levels? Should we not be thinking of upscaling the minimum educational qualification requirement for public officers? We should. Since policy is all about debating issues before casting votes, where so required, any chairman of local government, council or councillor, member of the House of Assembly, all of them, commissioners, should be able to communicate effectively their views on their various platforms so as to represent their various constituencies effectively. Somebody is sitting down, he didn't know the meaning of anything. What is a policy? He doesn't know. He says, are you calling a policeman? He doesn't know. He doesn't have that level. But in a situation where some don't even know what is being discussed, how then can they express their views, or how can they vote in the right direction? Today, Africa has been reduced to a byword and a proverb among many community of nations, largely because of the huge leadership gap that has plagued this part of the world over the years. It's time to wake up. Now, here are my thoughts as we round up. The Bible recommends fundamental requirements for filling leadership positions, which include capacity, the fear of God, the love of contentment, a life of contentment and integrity. He puts it this way: look ye from among yourselves able men, such as fear God, or call it such as love people, such that will not deliberately hurt people for their own gain. Men of truth, diakonos integrity, hating covetousness, the only cure for corruption, and place them over them as captains of tens, of fifties, of hundreds, and of 1,000. Now, fear of God simply means the love of God. And if you love God, you will love people. You don't love people, you don't love God. How can you claim to love God whom you have not seen, when you don't love people that you can see? That is, look out for people who have the required capacity and a genuine heart for God. Men of integrity. They say, yes, you find it so. Hating covetousness, contentment as their lifestyle. Furthermore, leaders are required to be proved before they are placed to serve after being found suitable. Contributiveness towards the good of the community, society, and the nation at large must be a principal factor in the screening process of who will be leaders. Somebody can just come from the glues, has never added any value to anything, has nothing traceable to him in his life. He doesn't want to be a leader, he wants to be a thief. Not anything of him has added value to anybody else. Be careful with such people. You know what the Bible says? Let them first be proved, and then let them serve. People can only believe what we do tomorrow by the understanding of what you have done and still doing today. Nobody wants to believe your grammar. What have you done? Some have never had any successful business in their life. Now they want to manage the business of a local government, the business of a state, and the business of a country. They have no imprint in any profession. No visible value to share. These are the things we are confronted with. In my view, all the aforementioned review of, demand review of processes and procedures towards the emergence of new generation of leaders in Africa is urgent. Review of processes and procedures towards the emergence of new generation of leaders in Africa is urgent. Why? In the year 2012, a major conglomerate here in Nigeria once advertised for company driver positions in which many graduates, including PhD holders, applied. Today, barely educated people occupy prestigious places in political leadership across Africa. What a paradox. Everything around us is changing except our political system. My submissions, in my opinion, which I have a right to. I love my liberty. Is people focused. I love my liberty. Is to secure the future of our great continent. All my writings over the years have been on the black race. The black race must come out of the woods. The black race must be able to stand side by side with other people from other continents of the world. Every political officer, from the local government chairman, all through the line up to the presidency, must have minimum academic qualification. Should be a first degree. The minimum should be a first degree or equivalent. The minimum. And I've told you why. You can't contribute to a debate when you don't have an understanding of the subject. You can't. You can't say, I think. What are you thinking? They are talking about budget. You have never had one word, never read a page in your life on budget. When we go to the village for a village meeting, you find some local people in the family. You have been talking since morning over some things. They will just say, Morope. And by the time he speaks, you know that he's not rowing anything. I think, but by the time he opens his mouth, he's not thinking at all. He doesn't even hear what I say. He's tired. That's why we need it. Secondly, and I'm saying this from the depth of my heart, sound health is a vital requirement for the demanding task of political leadership. You can't tell how many chairmen of local government are never on seat for weeks and months on health ground. People are there are not performing. What of those who are not there? So it imparts on the performance. Therefore, health screening should be made compulsory to save the state from non-performance issues and wasteful spending of state resources on medical expenses. Should such leaders turn out to be C-class or victims of certain terminal diseases? Amen. When a C-class has crisis, nothing goes. You know what I mean by sickle cell anemia? Your generation will not know it. That's why these are all fundamental things that should be checked. It's not about you looking fine. It's about, are you fine? Thirdly, there should be a thorough background check on the character of our leaders before being cleared for election. Thorough. Has he ever been to prison? How many cases has he answered to in the court? What were the cases like? I also think we should be working towards e-voting so as to stem the tide of electoral malpractices and fraud, manipulation, and political thuggery that sometimes leads to death. The world is changing. Not that you are doing election, everything shuts down. Everything shuts down. All commercial activities shut down. Why are we fighting and winning a war? And now you can't access some polling booths because some thugs are there whose job is to say, is he likely to vote for our subject? No, she. That's not necessary. The world has advanced beyond that. I want to believe that before the next election of 2023, Nigeria will be out of this. You know something last year, or the last election, the polling booth here, they cancelled it. They cancelled the polling booth. They don't know shame, sir. They cancelled the polling booth here. So that people here may not vote. How many remember? Are they likely to vote for us? No. Cancel the polling booth. Now they have voted for them. See what you have said. I was talking with one of the political leaders. I said, when I was shouting there, he said, sir, you didn't tell us what you saw. He said, did you ask? Don't push the blame on me. Did you ask? Did they ask? And you don't ask questions, you are not entitled to answers. How many believe we should be working towards e-voting? How many believe that, please? Now, another big shot. We should be considering a one-term only for all political office holders across the nation, states of Africa. One term, because the investment in attempting a re-election is a colossal waste of resources. You have only one term, just like you have only one life. Now I say I'm coming back. It's appointed unto man once to live, to die, and after that, judgment. So it's appointed to you to have only one term. Now, let me tell you what happens. When you are a first timer or first termer, now, after 1 year, you have forgotten all your promises. How to win the next election is what you are preparing for. So we have only 1 year of governance for where we have at all. And then the remaining 3 years is planning strategies, how to move money, how to change money towards the next election. So we have not had governance for a long time. Because of the greedy nature of the black man, one time is enough. Praise God. One time is enough. How many see what I'm talking about? And I'm not a politician. I'm just asking you a plain question. It's not about any party, about anybody. But can't you see reason in it? If you want to elongate it one time, elongate it. But one is enough. One is appointed to man once to die. After that, judgment. Once is enough. Like I said, these are my opinions that I'm entitled to. I believe that some of these ideas, if integrated into the democratic processes and procedures in Africa, our political system will become healthier and more people-oriented. Thank you for listening. I've already asked you the question you were asked, so they can now ask the questions, and then we can all answer it. Thank you very much.
Let's put our hands together once again. You may please be seated. Thank you so much, sir, for a stimulating presentation that is nudging us to rethink the operations of democracy and, of course, democratic leadership in Africa. And we also appreciate you for the privilege to ask questions from your session. So please, if you have questions to ask, I'll take about 4 questions to this session. Yes, ma'am. That's number 1. Number 2. Number 3. I'll take from someone who has not asked before. Up. Okay, number 4. Thank you. We'll start with you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A comment and a question. The oldest African civilization that archaeologists don't question is Nubia's land Kush. That's like 12,000 BC or BCE for some people. Now you get Kemet that comes around 4,500. And then you get the Greeks that come around 800 BCE, like, you know, Jim comes to Johannesburg. Now civilizations don't just spring out of nowhere. There is ample evidence out there that shows that Greek civilization was in fact African stolen civilization. People have written theses and books and studied and even argued this. So my comment and slight question is, I am not so convinced democracy is actually Greek patented. I think it's African. And for me to say our leaders are corrupt because they are used to constitutional monarchies, I then say, how about the many matriarchal kingdoms that were there in this continent that didn't have this stratified patriarchal approach? So I think our leaders are corrupt because they are corrupt because they choose to. And some of them are corrupt because as soon as they become presidents, they realize the name of the game here is collaborate or die. And we have ample evidence to this.
So the question.
So, yeah, no, I did say it's a question part comment. So for me, the issue is we need to, when we talk about our leaders and their political will, understand please that when we put them on a frying pan of saying do the right thing, they are killed in broad daylight. So what is it that we can do as citizens to ensure that leaders that really want to do the right thing are not killed in office like common criminals?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Weah.
Thank you very much. That has been very, very thought-provoking. Thank you very much, sir. We are proud of you. We, your followers. Sir, my very wonderful suggestions about the requirements to be eligible for political offices in Africa. Very, very low. The degree being the requirement. But sir, I look at this second term thing. I've always believed that when a leader, or let's just all these political leaders, if you are elected for 4 years, I believe those who designed this second term is because they feel that if an elected leader does well, he should be rewarded with another term. It is looked into in the reward system that if somebody performs creditably, the only reward he can get is to be elected. But if you don't perform creditably, then you are booted out. I believe if the other requirements are well integrated, the issue of second term, I think it is also a very good thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, the third question here.
Good afternoon. My name is Prince Olulio Ezekiel, a reporter of Icon magazine. Mine is not question, it's a contribution. Thank you very much, Bishop Oyedipo. My comments will come to not too young people that are clamoring to run election. The youths, they call themselves. Unfortunately, the youths of this country are not politically prepared because the so-called youths do not belong to any political parties. When we are holding political meetings, they stand afar and watch us. They only come close when it's time to serve mineral and biscuits and share money. Excuse me, I'm making a contribution. If the youth wants to be politically inclined and want to rule this country, first and foremost, you must start your political routines from the wards. They don't know the wards they belong to. They don't know their local governments. They don't know the chairman of the political parties. Yeah, they want to be House of Assembly members, House of Reps, Senate. It's not possible. So I'm advising you, if you want to be politician, first and foremost, register yourself with a political party. We have 91 of them in this country. But the big fives are APC, PDP, ADC.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll take
this is a problem.
I mean, if you can't list the 91, we shouldn't list any one of them at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, for the presentation. I learned a lot. So I know someone that is in politics. She's a woman. She has been in politics trying to get into a political position for a while. And she has the idea that she can make a lot of changes in Nigeria as a country. But because one, she's a woman, two, she's a Christian, and three, she's educated, she hasn't been able to get to that kind of position and to make that kind of change. Why? Because our political system has been designed in a way to frustrate people, to frustrate those that have the knowledge, people that can make the changes. It favors those that have the money, those that have the power now. So now, how do we start? Like you said, Rome is not built in one day, but it started one day. How do we start? How do we change everything? How do we take away that power from people above and put people in that position, people that can make the change?
Thank you very much. I think that will be all for now.
Thank you. Let me first appreciate the comments of Dr. Ishabalala for putting that historical record straight. I'm not an historian. I just take adventure in some of these things as they come true. Civilization is not an on-the-spot issue. It's a developing trade. And history always has its way of looking farther backward to get where certain things come from. But some of the time we look at when it was defined. When was it defined and what was it defined as? In my place, they will claim they have democracy because there are quite a number of compounds and quarters that have chiefs that come to the palace to meet with the king. Now, that could be called democracy, but it's not defined. It's a local arrangement. It has no definition we can put our hands on, but that's where they discuss the well-being of the town. That's where they make decisions on behalf of the people they represent. And so that could be the kind of scenario. But times people put it as 6 BC, the farther they can see. And then we see further, we go for it. Thank you very much for it. Now, number two is this question of, is it starting early? What? Oh, no, second term, is it? Okay. Yes, second term. Maybe he's planning to go into politics. And he needs to advocate for a second term position. Now, like I said, we do a lot of reading, a lot of studies, a lot of presentations, but we should also come down to begin to do lots of reasonings. We are talking about the quality of time spent in their first term. In Nigeria, it's 4 years. You spend maximum 1 year in trying to see if you can fulfill any balloon promise you made. Now, after that, the next agenda is how to prepare for a second term. If you meet any of them, they'll tell you the truth. So the screening can't solve that problem. Amen. It has to be by policy. We decided 2 terms before. Now we are saying 2 terms is not profiting us. Make it 1 term. That 1 term you can make it 5 years if you want, but make it 1 term. Make it 1 term so that there is no struggling for a 2nd term and not performing your 1st term. No, that's what we're talking about. So I think that is a matter of debate. We can debate that, but my own view, I say it's my view, it's not a government view. And it's not a party view. I don't belong to any party. I won't belong to anyone till I die. That's not my area of calling. But it's important for us to just look at some of those things. Now, for the youth to start young, they also have to look where. Some of these parties are perpetrators of these things that we are talking about. Can the youth be comfortable within that system? Can they galvanize themselves into a party of their choice and drive you with the zeal and zest of the youth and take over? We didn't belong to any educational association when we built Covenant. We didn't belong to, and we don't belong to one up till now. You can make a difference. If you hear my views on the present ongoing things in our country, the political system, you will run. Because we almost had no choice. And yet we must make a choice. I leave the rest to you. Amen. So there is need for the youth to take their own life in their own hand and not be part of these inexplanables. You want to run. Somebody wanted to run for a gubernatorial race. They asked him to go and bring billions. I mean, billions. He said, for what? You want to get a form, they say, come and bring 250 million. How? So the whole system has that kind of rotten foundation that has to be repackaged. So youth, look well before you jump, please. Don't trap your destiny. You have the population. Build a strategy. Praise God. Build a strategy. If you can stand your ground, why not? You can be in any party. If not, you better find one. There are too many parties now. A lot of them are built by young people, youth like you. Galvanize! Instead of 58 parties, put yourself together. And make yourself relevant by telling us what you have in stock for us. I think everything I've heard, they are my views. They are not C-ICADI views. So don't hold C-ICADI responsible, hold me responsible. These are some of. Do we have anyone remaining? I think we're done. Are we okay? Okay. You have any other view, you can share it. And you are free to also counter my view. It will make a difference. My views are my views. Thank you and God bless you.
Let's put our hands together once again for the Chancellor, Dr. David O. Oyedepo. Thank you very much, sir. We may please be seated as we begin to wrap up this main session. We'll be going for lunch in a couple of minutes, and the lunch will last for about 20 minutes at Cafeteria 2. Immediately after the lunch, please let's take the following announcements before we leave. Immediately after the lunch, we'll have the breakout technical and scientific sessions All of the sessions will be at the Cookreed building. From this one. After this building, there's a building between Cook